Well, got me a 14-pound turkey, and I just don't seem to have the refrigerator spaces. So there's no room at the end here. Okay, I got a cooler. We'll see what we can do with that. Now the cooler, I put a bucket in here, and I can actually put in a gallon of ice frozen water. I'll put the turkey in next to the bucket. This will keep the turkey dry because I'm going to put ice around the outside. I've been able to get up to 15 pounds of ice around this particular bucket. With just the ice, the cooler only goes down around 50 degrees. So it doesn't keep the food cold enough at refrigerator temperatures. So what I did was I added salt, just like if you were making ice cream. And if I had anything that I needed to keep frozen, I would put it in with the ice or on top of the ice. But this does bring it down to refrigerator temperatures. And as you can see, I'm down at about 34 degrees, so that works pretty well. And at that low of a temperature, the ice actually lasts longer. Now I'm going to use the Epsilon method of cooking this turkey, which I explain in detail on my website. The first thing we have to do, though, is take this frozen turkey and we want to thaw it rapidly at a safe temperature. Now I have a programmable roaster oven that I'm going to use to thaw the turkey, but you can do this in a conventional oven as well. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to set the temperature to around 170. In this case I have to do 175, but just leave it in there for approximately 3.5–4 hours. And that's enough to thaw the turkey, and it will not hurt the plastic. None of it's going to melt the plastic or anything of that nature, but you'll have the turkey thawed within about 3.5–4 hours. Now I'm going to use the Epsilon method of cooking this turkey, which I explain in detail on my website. But conventionally, people use a temperature of 350 degrees, and they go about 20 minutes per pound. Keep in mind this turkey is frozen, and when you expose the outer skin to 350 degrees, you're actually overcooking and drying out the external portion of the turkey, trying to get the internal temperature to about 165. And so meat rises in an epsilon format. As you can see, it's not linear, it is on a curved graph, and it rises very rapidly early on, especially if you have a high temperature. So you're cooking a very thick piece of meat at a very high rate, and you're burning the outside, trying to get the temperature up on the inside. So we're going to use a little different method here. We're going to reduce the oven temperature to 200 degrees, and our intent here is to reduce the difference between the external temperature and the internal temperature so that we're cooking more evenly throughout the bird. The other advantage here is we are below the boiling point of water, so we're not going to be steaming juices out and drying out the bird. We're going to have a lot of juice for gravy, a lot of juice for our dressing, and we're going to cover the bird, keep it covered throughout the process. We'll worry about actually browning the skin later. One thing we want to make note is when using this Epsilon method of cooking, if you keep your oven temperature low, your internal temperature falls higher on the curve. And if it falls higher on the curve, you'll notice on the chart the percent of change, rate of change, decreases as we move higher on the curve. And when it decreases, we're now cooking a large bird or large piece of meat more slowly, allowing the heat to distribute more evenly throughout. Now that the bird has thawed and the giblets and such have been removed, it's now time to prepare the rub. And what I'm using is a ghee, and I'm sprinkling a bunch of seasonings in. And the ghee is room temperature right now, but it's actually better if you put it in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes, then apply it to the bird. You can now place the turkey in a covered pan. There's no need to preheat the oven. Just turn it out to 200 degrees, and we're going to go 1 hour per pound. And we want to go for that full 1 hour because our intent is to dissolve the collagen in the thighs. This is the connective tissue. And it turns into a nice, flavorful, fall off the bone gel if you go the full 1 hour per pound. Be sure to keep an eye on the internal temperature periodically. So as it approaches 160 or 165, what you want to do is reduce the oven temperature to 170. And what that'll do is it'll actually slow down the cooking process. The rate of change drops drastically, and you will find that you can actually leave it in 30 minutes, and it'll probably change 1 degree. Because our oven temperature was below boiling the whole time, we have a lot of juice for gravy and dressing. One of my co-workers showed me that if I put the gravy in a Ziploc bag and just let it rest, all the fats will float to the top. I could then snip out the bottom, transferring the gravy into a large bowl. Be sure to keep the bottom of the bag very low in the bowl. This is what the turkey looked like after we removed it from the oven without doing any further browning. You can see that I have it a little bit over a quart of gravy, which gives me plenty for dressing and gravy. And if I choose to brown it any further, I would just let it rest, crank up the oven to 450 degrees, and then put the turkey back in the oven for approximately 10 to 12